Some stories don't start with a scream. They start with a choice. A man chose to save a little money, chose a quiet place, chose a dark road that no one seemed to care about. And for 2 nights, nothing happened. No warnings, no signs, no voices in the dark. Until the 3rd night, when the power went out, when the knocking started, and when something reached up from the ground and grabbed him. This is not a story about ghosts in abandoned houses, or shadows that disappear when the lights come back on. This is a story about what happens when the darkness notices you, remembers you, and decides not to let you go. Because Ethan Miller survived that night near Abilene, Texas. But survival doesn't always mean escape. So listen carefully, and don't turn this off when the silence gets heavy. Somewhere in this story, there's a moment when the ground itself reaches back, and once you hear it, you'll understand why some roads should never be taken at night. Summer in Texas does not arrive quietly. It presses down from the sky, heavy, relentless, as if the sun itself is watching, waiting. Ethan Miller had spent most of his adult life moving from place to place, following the rhythm of traveling fairs across the United States. County to county, state to state, empty fields transformed into noise, lights, and laughter, then abandoned again just as quickly. By that summer, he had learned something important about the road. Some places felt temporary. Others felt like they were never meant to be disturbed. The fair near Abilene, Texas, felt different. Not Abilene itself, but a small town just outside of it. One of those places where the land stretched endlessly, where fences ran crooked, and where the silence felt older than memory. The company had rented a large open field for a week-long fair. Rides, food stalls, games, music that echoed into the night and faded into nothing by morning. Everything was covered. Hotel rooms, meals, even overnight guards to watch the fairgrounds. But Ethan didn't take the hotel. He never did. Sleeping among the stalls felt familiar, safe in a strange way. Metal frames creaking in the wind, distant hum of generators. A place where sounds had reasons. Instead, he rented a cheap boarding house a few miles away, just to shower. That was all he needed. The building sat at the end of a long dirt road that didn't appear on most GPS systems. A thin line of earth cutting through dry grass and dead trees. No streetlights. No houses nearby. No signs. When Ethan first drove down that road, dust rose behind his pickup truck and lingered in the air far longer than it should have, like smoke refusing to clear. The sun was already low, painting the land in dull oranges and deep reds. Shadows stretched unnaturally long across the ground. At the end of the road stood the boarding house. It looked tired. Paint peeled from its walls in long strips. The windows were clouded with grime and age. The porch sagged slightly, as if the building itself was bowing under some invisible weight. Only one light was on. A single bulb above the front door, flickering, struggling. Ethan parked his truck and stepped out. The silence hit him immediately. No insects, no wind, no distant traffic, just quiet, thick and absolute. He knocked. After a moment, the door opened. The man who stood there was thin, almost hollow. His eyes sat deep in his skull, reflecting very little light. He didn't smile. "You here for the room?" the man asked. Ethan nodded. The man took the cash without counting it. "Power goes out sometimes," he said flatly. "Don't wander at night." Ethan waited for more. An explanation. A warning. Anything. But the man simply handed him a key and closed the door. The hallway inside smelled faintly of mildew and old wood. Each step echoed strangely, like the building was listening. The bathroom was at the end of the hall. Old tiles. Cracked mirror. A light that buzzed faintly overhead. That first night, nothing happened. Ethan showered, drove back to the fair, slept among the stalls under a sky crowded with stars. The second day passed the same way, but by the third evening, something felt wrong. The air along the dirt road seemed heavier, the shadows deeper, the silence more deliberate. As Ethan turned off the highway and onto the road, his radio cut out. Static hissed briefly, then nothing. He drove the rest of the way in silence. When he parked, the porch light flickered, then steadied. Ethan unlocked the door and stepped inside. The moment he closed it, the power went out. Not gradually. Instantly. The light vanished. The hallway disappeared. Darkness swallowed everything. Ethan stood still, listening. No hum of electricity returning. No voices. No cars. Just his breathing, suddenly too loud. "Great," he muttered. He pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark hallway, revealing walls that looked older than he remembered. Stains that hadn't been there before, or maybe he just hadn't noticed. The light didn't reach very far. The darkness beyond it felt patient. Ethan walked toward the bathroom. Each step echoed, once, then again, as if something was following a moment behind. He told himself it was just nerves, just the power outage, just Texas at night. But as he reached the bathroom door, a strange thought crossed his mind. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt occupied. And somewhere in that darkness, something was waiting. The bathroom door closed behind Ethan with a dull, hollow sound. Not a slam, not a click. More like something heavy settling into place. The beam from his phone flashlight trembled slightly as his hand moved. The light revealed cracked tiles the color of old bone. Dark lines running through them like veins beneath skin. The air inside the bathroom felt colder than the hallway. Not enough to raise goosebumps, but enough to make his skin feel wrong. Ethan swallowed. "This is stupid," he muttered under his breath. Power outages happened. Old buildings creaked. Texas roads were dark. He reached for the shower knob and turned it. Nothing. He twisted it harder. For a long moment, silence. Then the pipes screamed. A sharp, metallic shriek tore through the walls, echoing far longer than it should have. It didn't sound like water rushing through metal. It sounded like something waking up. Ethan flinched. The sound traveled upward, then downward, then seemed to crawl through the walls themselves. Finally, water burst from the shower head. He stepped under it, letting the warm spray hit his shoulders. Steam rose slowly, curling into the darkness above him. The beam from his phone reflected strangely off the mist, creating shifting shapes that vanished as quickly as they formed. Ethan closed his eyes. Just a shower. 5 minutes. Then out. The water masked most sounds. But not all. Beneath the steady rush, he could still hear the building. Wood expanding. Something ticking, softly, somewhere behind the walls. He told himself it was pipes cooling. He tilted his head back, letting the water run over his face. That was when he heard it. A knock. Sharp. Sudden. Bang. Ethan snapped his eyes open. The sound came from the bathroom door. Not from far away. Not muffled. Right there. He stood frozen, water streaming down his body, heart pounding against his ribs. "Hello," he called. His voice sounded smaller than he expected, as if the walls absorbed it. No answer. The silence returned, heavier than before. The water kept running. Ethan waited. Seconds stretched. Then, bang, bang, bang. Faster this time. Harder. Each knock landed with force, like a fist striking wood with intent. Ethan's breath caught. "Who's there?" he asked, louder now. Nothing. No footsteps. No movement. Not even the creak of the hallway floor. Just silence, pressing in from all sides. His mind raced. The owner. A prank. Someone checking rooms? But the road was empty. There were no other cars. No lights. The knocking came again. Slower. Deliberate. Bang. A pause. Bang. Another pause. Bang. Each knock felt measured, as if whoever was on the other side was taking their time. Listening. Waiting. Ethan's chest tightened. He reached out and turned off the water. The pipes groaned, then fell silent. Without the shower, the quiet felt unbearable. He strained to hear something. Anything. Breathing. Movement. A voice. There was nothing. "This isn't funny," Ethan said. His words hung in the air, then vanished. Slowly, he stepped closer to the door. The flashlight beam wobbled across the wood. Old. Scratched. Marks near the bottom. Long and thin, like something had been dragged across it repeatedly. He hadn't noticed those before. Ethan reached out, hesitated, then placed his hand on the door. It was cold. Too cold. Not like wood cooled by night air, but like something that had never been warm to begin with. He pulled his hand back. The knocking didn't return. Minutes passed. Ethan stood there, dripping, muscles tense, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Finally, he told himself it was over. He grabbed a towel and dried off quickly, never taking his eyes off the door. When he was dressed, he unlocked it. The hallway beyond was completely dark. His phone light cut a narrow path forward. No one stood outside. No shadows moved. But the hallway felt altered, longer than before, narrower. The walls seemed closer, leaning inward slightly, like ribs closing around a lung. Ethan stepped out. The bathroom door closed behind him with the same dull sound. Halfway down the hallway, he heard it. A faint sound. Not footsteps. Not breathing. A soft scraping, dragging lightly along the floor, somewhere behind him. He stopped. The sound stopped too. Ethan turned slowly. The hallway behind him was empty. "Get a grip," he whispered. He walked faster now. Each step echoed strangely. Once, then again, as if the building was repeating his movements a fraction of a second too late. When he reached the front door, relief washed over him. Fresh air. Space. Light. at least from the stars. He unlocked the door and stepped outside. The night swallowed him. The porch light was still off. The land beyond the building lay hidden in darkness. His pickup truck sat where he left it, a dark shape against darker ground. Ethan exhaled and started toward it. That was when the horn went off. A sudden, violent blast shattered the silence. Honk! Ethan jumped. The horn blared again, and again, and again. Relentless. The sound echoed across the fields, bouncing off nothing and returning distorted, warped. The truck's lights were off. The doors were closed. No one was inside. "What the hell are you doing?" Ethan shouted, then realized how ridiculous it sounded. The horn didn't stop. Panic crept up his spine. He pulled out his phone, fingers shaking, and opened YouTube, anything to ground himself, anything familiar. The screen lit up. For half a second. Then it flickered. Once. Twice. The light stretched, distorted, then collapsed into black. The phone shut down. Complete darkness. The horn screamed. Ethan stood alone in the dark, heart racing, breath shallow. The night felt closer now, thicker, as if it had leaned in to watch. He took a step toward the truck. The horn stopped. Silence crashed down like a wave. Ethan froze, and in that silence, he felt it. A presence. Low, close, right behind him. Silence can be louder than any sound. When the truck horn stopped, the quiet that followed didn't feel natural. It didn't fade in. It slammed down. Ethan stood frozen in the darkness, every muscle locked in place. The air around him felt heavier now, as if it had thickened while he wasn't looking. Each breath took effort. Each heartbeat echoed too loudly inside his skull. He didn't want to turn around. Some part of him already knew. Turning around would make it real. "Hello," he said softly. His voice barely carried a few feet before dissolving into the night. No answer. But the feeling didn't go away. It hovered low, close to the ground, right behind him. Ethan took a slow step forward. The dirt shifted under his boot. And then, something grabbed him. A hand clamped around his ankle with sudden, brutal force. Ice cold. Not the chill of night air. Not the coolness of metal. Cold like something that had never known warmth. Ethan screamed. The sound tore out of his throat as his balance vanished. His foot was yanked backward, hard, and he crashed onto the dirt. The impact knocked the breath from his lungs. Dust filled his mouth and nose. The world exploded into pain and panic. He kicked wildly, boots scraping uselessly against the ground. "Let go," he shouted, though he had no idea who or what he was yelling at. The grip tightened. Fingers dug into his ankle, pressing deep, as if testing bone and muscle, as if searching for the right place to break him. Ethan clawed at the dirt, dragging himself forward inch by inch. Then, the porch light flickered. Once, twice. For a brief moment, weak yellow light spilled across the ground. And Ethan saw them. Two shapes. Human, but wrong. They were low to the ground, bodies pressed flat as they crawled toward him. Their movements were jerky, uneven, like they weren't used to their own limbs. Long hair hung over their faces in tangled curtains, hiding their features. Strands dragged through the dirt, sticking to skin that looked pale, almost gray. Their arms bent at strange angles, elbows jutting out too far, joints twisting unnaturally as they moved. And their hands, their fingers were too long. Blackened nails scraped against the ground as they crawled, producing a slow, deliberate sound. Scratch, scratch. The sound crawled up Ethan's spine. The hand on his ankle tightened again. He screamed, louder this time, his voice cracking as pure terror took over. Please, please. One of the figures lifted its head. Just slightly. Enough for Ethan to see a glimpse of its face. Or what should have been a face. Skin stretched too tight over bone. Mouth hanging open, jaw slack, as if it had forgotten how to close. And the eyes. They reflected the porch light faintly, but there was no awareness in them. No curiosity, no emotion, just emptiness. The second figure moved closer, its nails digging into the dirt, dragging its body forward with slow, patient intent. They weren't rushing. They didn't need to. Ethan's body shook violently as panic flooded every nerve. He kicked again, connecting with something solid. The grip loosened, just for a second. Ethan seized the moment and dragged himself forward, screaming as pain shot through his ankle. He reached the truck's bumper and grabbed it, fingers slipping against cold metal. The porch light flickered again, then went out. Darkness swallowed everything, but the hands were still there. One wrapped around his ankle, another brushed against his calf. Cold fingers traced upward, testing, exploring. Ethan sobbed. Not words anymore, just sound. He felt nails press into his skin, not piercing, not yet, but enough to promise what would come next. His vision blurred. The edges of the world faded. The darkness felt closer, heavier, like it was pouring into him. And then, the whispers started. Low, close, not in his ears, inside his head. He couldn't understand the words, if they were words at all, but they carried weight. A pressure, a sense of being seen, examined, remembered. Ethan tried to scream again. Nothing came out. His throat closed. The figures moved closer. He could feel their breath now, cold, stale, smelling faintly of dirt and something old, something decayed. The whispers grew louder. The world tilted. The last thing Ethan saw, just before everything went black, was the porch light flickering back on, illuminating the dirt, the truck, and his own hands clawing uselessly at the ground. Then, nothing. Time lost meaning. Ethan drifted in darkness, caught between dreams and something far worse. Images flashed behind his closed eyes. The dirt road stretching endlessly. The boarding house leaning inward. Hands reaching up from the ground. Again and again. The whispers never stopped. They pressed against him, not aggressive, not angry, patient, waiting. Something brushed his cheek. He flinched, but his body wouldn't move. Cold breath passed near his ear. And then, a vibration, sharp, sudden. Ethan gasped. His eyes flew open. Light exploded into existence. The porch light blazed overhead. The hallway lights buzzed on inside the building. Electricity hummed back to life. Ethan sucked in air, chest heaving, heart slamming against his ribs. The night was empty. No figures. No hands. No whispers. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. He fumbled for it, hands shaking uncontrollably. The screen was on, battery full. No missed calls, no alerts, just the lock screen, glowing innocently. Ethan scrambled to his feet. Pain shot through his ankle, but he didn't stop to check it. He looked around wildly. The ground was undisturbed. No drag marks, no footprints, nothing to prove what had happened. But his skin burned where the hand had grabbed him. Cold lingered there, deep beneath the surface. Ethan didn't wait. He ran. He didn't shut the door, didn't turn off the lights, didn't look back. He jumped into his truck and drove, tires spinning, heart pounding, breath ragged. The dirt road disappeared behind him, but the feeling didn't. Ethan didn't know how long he had been unconscious. Time, when it returned, felt broken. He became aware of sound first. A low hum, steady, mechanical. Electricity, then light. Not sudden, but creeping in at the edges of his vision. Soft at first, then harsh. Ethan groaned. His head throbbed like it had been split open and stitched back together poorly. His mouth tasted of dirt and copper. He tried to move. Pain flared up his leg, sharp and immediate, radiating from his ankle all the way to his knee. He gasped and curled inward instinctively, clutching his leg. The ground beneath him was solid. Dry dirt. Cold. Not the darkness. Not the hands. His eyes opened fully. The porch light was on. Bright. Unforgiving. The boarding house stood exactly as it had before. Quiet. Still. Unconcerned. For a moment, Ethan wondered if he had dreamed everything. Then he looked at his ankle. Red marks circled the skin. Finger-shaped. Too precise to be imagined. The cold lingered there, deep inside, like something had left part of itself behind. Ethan swallowed hard. He pushed himself upright, every movement slow and careful. The night around him felt different now. The darkness had retreated to its proper place, clinging to the edges of the fields. Crickets chirped hesitantly, as if unsure whether it was safe to resume. Somewhere in the distance, a truck passed on the highway. Normal sounds. Normal life. His phone buzzed in his hand. Ethan flinched violently. The screen lit up. 12:47 a.m. He stared at the time, his breath catching. The last thing he remembered before blacking out. It had been just after 10. More than an hour was gone. He checked his call log. Nothing. Messages. Nothing. Battery level. Nearly full. Everything looked untouched, pristine, as if the phone had never died at all. That terrified him more than the darkness. Ethan stood up, his legs screaming in protest. He half expected the ground to grab him again, half expected fingers to burst through the dirt and drag him back down. Nothing happened. Still, he kept his eyes on the ground as he limped toward his truck. Each step felt watched, not followed, observed, as if something inside the building, or beneath the land, was paying attention, but no longer needed to act. When he reached the driver's door, he paused. The interior light flicked on. Empty. Normal. He got in and locked the doors immediately, hands shaking as the locks clicked into place. The engine turned over on the first try. The sound felt unreal. Too loud. Too reassuring. Ethan pulled out onto the dirt road, tires crunching loudly against gravel. He didn't turn on the radio. He didn't want noise. He wanted awareness. As the truck moved farther from the boarding house, the porch light shrank in his rearview mirror, becoming just another distant glow. Then it vanished completely. Ethan exhaled shakily, but the feeling didn't go away. That sense of being observed followed him down the road, clung to him like humidity. He didn't slow down until he reached the fairgrounds. The familiar lights, the generators humming, the shapes of rides silhouetted against the sky. They grounded him. He parked and sat in the truck for a long time, hands gripping the steering wheel, waiting for his heart to stop racing. Eventually, exhaustion took over. Ethan didn't sleep. Not really. He drifted. Every time his eyes closed, he saw hands reaching up from the dirt, heard nails scraping against the ground, felt cold breath near his ear. By morning, his head ached and his body felt hollow. The sun rose over the fairgrounds like nothing had happened. People arrived. Children laughed. Music played. Normal. Ethan moved through the day on autopilot. He didn't tell anyone what happened. How could he? There were no marks except the fading bruises on his ankle. No witnesses. No evidence. And yet, something had changed. Every loud noise made him flinch. Every shadow felt too deep. Every quiet moment stretched just a little too long. When evening came, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wasn't going back to that boarding house. As the sun dipped low, Ethan packed his things and loaded them into his truck. He told his supervisor he was feeling sick. No questions were asked. As he drove away from the fairgrounds, he glanced once in the rearview mirror. The land behind him lay calm and unremarkable. But somewhere beyond the fields, beyond the road, beyond what could be seen, something waited. Not angry, not desperate, patient. The drive out of town felt longer than it should have. Every mile marker passed too slowly. Every stretch of road looked the same. Ethan kept checking his mirrors. Sometimes, just for a split second, he thought he saw movement in the darkness behind him. A shape, low to the ground. But when he blinked, there was nothing. When he finally reached the highway, relief washed over him. Traffic, lights, civilization. The world resumed its normal shape. But the cold in his ankle didn't fade. Even days later, even weeks later, sometimes late at night, when the power flickered or the house grew too quiet, Ethan would feel it again. That subtle pressure, that certainty, the knowledge that something, somewhere, still remembered him. Leaving Texas didn't make it stop. Ethan learned that slowly, painfully, over time. At first, he told himself what happened near Abilene was an isolated incident. A perfect storm of exhaustion, darkness, fear, and imagination. That explanation worked. For a while. Weeks passed, then months. Life continued the way it always had. More fairs, more towns, more long drives through unfamiliar places. On the surface, nothing had changed. But beneath that surface, something had shifted. Ethan stopped sleeping deeply. When he did sleep, his dreams were shallow and broken, like water disturbed by constant ripples. He woke up often, heart racing, convinced someone was standing just out of sight. Sometimes, in those moments between sleep and waking, he heard it. A sound. Soft. Rhythmic. Scratch. Scratch. As if nails were dragging slowly across a floor. Each time, he would sit bolt upright, scanning the room, breath shallow. Nothing was ever there. The first time the power went out after Texas, Ethan nearly broke down. He was staying in a small motel off a highway in Oklahoma. Just after midnight, the lights flickered, then died. The room plunged into darkness. Ethan's chest tightened instantly. The silence felt too familiar. His hands shook as he reached for his phone. The flashlight came on, and he nearly cried with relief. But he didn't move. He sat on the edge of the bed, light clenched in his hand, listening. The motel was quiet. Too quiet. Then, faintly, from somewhere beyond the wall, a knock. Single. Soft. Ethan froze. "No," he whispered. The knock didn't repeat. He stayed awake until dawn, light on, eyes burning. After that night, he began to notice patterns. Places that felt like Texas. Rural roads. Old buildings. Unlit stretches of land. Whenever he passed through them, his ankle would ache. A deep, internal cold that no amount of warmth could chase away. Doctors couldn't find anything wrong. X-rays were clean. Blood work normal. "It's probably nerve damage," one of them said. Ethan nodded, but he knew better. Nerves didn't remember hands. Nerves didn't ache only when the world went quiet. He stopped taking jobs that required overnight stays in remote areas. Stopped sleeping in fairgrounds. Stopped trusting silence. Still, it followed. Not physically, not visibly, but in the way shadows seemed too aware. In the way dark corners felt occupied. Once, years later, he caught his reflection in a mirror during a blackout. For just a moment, he thought he saw something behind him. Low, close to the ground. When he turned around, the room was empty. But the mirror had fogged, as if someone else had been breathing there. Ethan avoided Texas after that. Refused any route that took him through the state. But memory doesn't respect borders. On a late-night drive through New Mexico, he pulled into a rest stop to sleep. The lot was empty, the building old, the air dry and still. As he locked his truck doors, a familiar thought crept into his mind. This feels wrong. He stayed anyway. Sometime around 3 a.m., he woke suddenly. No sound, no movement. Just that feeling, the sense of being watched. Ethan didn't move, didn't breathe. Then he felt it. A pressure near his ankle. Not a grip. Not yet. Just proximity. As if something was there, inches away, remembering how it felt to touch him. Ethan screamed and kicked wildly, scrambling backward. The interior light came on. Nothing was there, but the cold lingered for hours. After that, Ethan stopped traveling altogether. He took a desk job, moved into a small apartment in a busy city. Light, noise, people, places where silence didn't last long enough to grow teeth. And for a while, it worked. Years passed. The nightmares faded slightly. The cold dulled. Ethan began to believe, truly believe, that whatever had happened had finally loosened its grip. Until the night the city lost power. It was a widespread outage. A summer storm knocked out electricity across several neighborhoods. Ethan's apartment went dark without warning. Street lights died. Traffic sounds softened. The city fell quiet in a way it rarely did. Ethan stood in his living room, heart pounding, surrounded by shadows that suddenly felt too deep. He didn't move, didn't reach for his phone. He knew better. Then he heard it. Not from outside, not from the hallway, from inside his apartment. A sound near the floor. Slow, deliberate. Scratch. Ethan backed away, breath shallow. The sound stopped. The lights came back on seconds later. Everything was normal again. Too normal. There were no marks on the floor. No signs of intrusion. Nothing to prove it had happened. Except the ache in his ankle, flaring like it had that night in Texas. Ethan sank into a chair and covered his face with his hands. That was when he finally understood. It wasn't tied to the building. It wasn't tied to the land. It was tied to him. Whatever had reached out of the ground near Abilene had never really let go. Ethan Miller never went back to that road near Abilene, Texas. Not in body. But memory has a way of reopening doors long after they've been sealed. Years after the incident, Ethan learned how to live with the silence. But he never trusted it. He filled his days with noise, radio talk shows, television murmuring in the background, music playing softly even when he wasn't listening. Silence, he discovered, was not empty. It was a container, and whatever had touched him that night knew how to wait inside it. Ethan tried therapy, tried medication, tried convincing himself that trauma could explain everything, and maybe it could. But trauma didn't leave finger-shaped bruises that burned with cold years later. Trauma didn't respond to darkness the way this did. On his 40th birthday, Ethan sat alone in his apartment, lights on, rain tapping softly against the windows. A calm night, a safe night, or so it seemed. The power flickered once, just a blink, enough to make his heart seize. The lights came back immediately. Ethan exhaled and laughed quietly at himself. Then he felt it. A sensation near his ankle. Not a touch. Not pressure. Presence. Like something crouched just beyond his peripheral vision. Low to the ground. Patient. "I know," Ethan whispered. The sensation didn't move. Didn't retreat. It stayed. Not threatening. Not comforting. Acknowledging. That was when Ethan realized something that chilled him deeper than fear ever had. It wasn't hunting him. It was checking on him. Making sure he still remembered. Later that night, Ethan dreamed. He stood on the dirt road outside Abilene again. The air was heavy. The land silent. The boarding house waited at the end of the road. Lights on. Door open. He didn't want to go inside, but his feet moved anyway. As he approached, he noticed something new. The ground around the building was covered in marks. Long trails in the dirt. As if something had crawled in circles. Over and over. For a very long time. Inside, the hallway stretched farther than it ever had. Doors lined the walls, each one slightly open. From behind them came faint sounds, breathing, scraping, whispers just below the threshold of understanding. Ethan woke with a sharp gasp. The apartment was dark. Not completely. Just enough light from the city to reveal shapes. The power was still on. Everything was normal. And yet, there it was again. That feeling. Low, close, right at the edge of the bed. Ethan didn't look down. he had learned. Some confirmations were worse than ignorance. Over time, the visits became less frequent, but more deliberate. Always during blackouts. Always when the world went quiet. Never during storms. Never during chaos. Only when there was space enough for something else to enter. Ethan began to wonder if it would ever stop, or if one day it would decide to finish what it started. He left instructions in his will. If anything ever happened to him during a power outage, if his body was found on the floor, near a doorway, with no signs of struggle, he wanted people to know, not what took him, but where it started. A small town near Abilene, Texas. A dirt road. A boarding house that didn't appear on maps anymore. He checked once, out of morbid curiosity. Satellite images showed nothing. Just empty land. No building. No road. As if it had never existed. That bothered him more than anything else. Because it meant the place didn't disappear. It simply finished its purpose. Ethan grew old. Older than he ever thought he would. And on one quiet night, years later, the power went out one last time. Not just in his apartment. In the entire city. No lights. No traffic. No sound. True silence. Ethan sat in his chair, heart beating steadily. No panic. No fear. Just awareness. He felt the presence again. Closer than ever. Right at his ankle. The cold returned. "I remember," Ethan whispered. The silence deepened. Somewhere, very far away, on a road no one drives anymore, something shifted, and then, nothing. Some stories don't end with screams. They end with waiting. Because some places don't haunt the land. They haunt the people who leave. And if you ever find yourself alone in the dark, with the power out, and the ground feeling closer than it should, remember this. Some hands never let go.